Hey, my name is Nolan Sperling, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the brief history of communication and what has led up to the demand for and development of the Galaxy S8 smartphone. All right, the S8, very advanced piece of technology, but if we go back to the beginning of not only the cell phone but communication itself, we would find that in the early days, the earliest of ancient times, people use signal flares, smoke signals, pardon me, beacons, and like pieces of wood burning kind of sort of beacons, and reflected light, mostly smoke signals. Things you would associate with like Native Americans or some. But those were generally considered the earliest forms of long distance communication. And following that, didn't really see an evolution from there until maybe the early 1700s when the optical telegraph was discovered and used for the first time. It was used mainly by governments and more specifically militaries like the Royal Navy and the Revolutionary Army in France, led by Napoleon in the late 1700s. And by the mid 1800s, however, the optical telegraph had been outpaced by the electrical telegraph, which was expensive because it required many miles worth of lines to communicate between, two people or whatever you were going. Um, but by the middle of the 1800s, by 1852, there were over 30,000 miles of wire for electrical telegraphs across the world. And a majority of that wire was in the United States of America. About 23,000 miles of it were in the US of A. All right, and so pretty quickly thereafter, maybe 30, 40 years, was the invention of the telephone, which was invented by numerous individuals, basically incremental work by a lot of different people that eventually led to the widespread adoption and commercialization of the telephone, most famously made by Alexander Graham Bell. He commercialized it by the late 1800s, and I'd say by the early 20th century, the technology had been widespread and had been adopted by a vast majority of the modern world. And it really wasn't until the, three-fourths of the way through the 20th century, another 70 years, until the telephone had really advanced, just beyond, the big wooden box and then getting slimmer and slimmer in a house phone. I mean, really like take an innovative leap. And that innovative leap happened in 1973 when Motorola created the first ever cell phone. Now, this cell phone, big and blocky like me talking on my cup right now, but it worked. It was a advancement of technology, a huge advancement at the time. And so after that point, for the next 20, 25 years or so, the cell phone kept on getting further and further shrunk and more refined. It could still really only basically make and receive calls, maybe, have a contact list and whatnot, but it was still a very basic phone. And, it wasn't really until the early Blackberries came out in the early 90s and the introduction of, for example, the IBM Simon that really led to a cell phone that had additional features on it. And, like a personal assistant, I think the PDAs, what those were called, that could send and receive emails. Those were the first devices that could really do anything beyond just calling people, which I think by the mid 1990s, the consumer was antsy and they could see this new technology where the phone could be something more than just to call people with. And I feel like that really helped accelerate the development of what we see today as the modern smartphone.